Welcome back to the Emily Show. Law Nerds, I am back from BravoCon. It's Thanksgiving week. There are a lot of case updates we need to talk about. Updates in the Karen Reed case, the Brian Walshe case, the David investigation into the death of Celeste Rivera, and some of the things that came out at BravoCon. So we are going to try to do this in a quick fashion with a bunch of case updates. But again, it's me. So we'll see how it goes, but law nerds, buckle up because we've got a lot to talk about. Let's go. I'm legal analyst Emily D. Baker, yes, also a lawyer, and this is The Emily Show. I break down the pop culture, entertainment, and high-profile cases that we're all talking about. I know you want the facts, so let's get into it. First of all, law nerds, many of you have been asking me, Emily, there's a trial. Are we covering Brian Walshe? So let's talk about it real quick. First, if you want to know everything that I'm up to, and if you want the behind the scenes on BravoCon, you need the Law Nerd app. And if you want the members only, Law Nerd Lounge at lawnerdlounge.com is our exclusive paid members only part of our app. It's where we get to chat with each other. We do behind the scenes recording of the podcast and more. So if you are interested in all of that, check out Law Nerd Lounge at lawnerdlounge.com. And if you just want to stay in the loop with app notifications, our app is completely free for you at lawnerdapp.com. So thank you, Law Nerd app, for keeping everyone in the loop. Now, I was over in the Law Nerd Lounge chatting with y'all and put the question to the Law Nerds, do we want to cover a trial in December? I talked to Dr. Baker and the kids about it, and I was like, look, it's a trial in Massachusetts. It's not as long as it's going to be in Florida. And the resounding response was, girl, yes, trial immediately. So yes, starting December 1st, we will be streaming gavel-to-gavel for the Brian Walshe case. There may be a few days where the schedule gets disrupted due to holiday and school obligations. I will keep you apprised of that in the app, but it is my goal to cover day to day. And if we have to start later some days because of school things, then I'll just let you know and we'll do it. It'll be good. What I want to see is what's going to happen with Trooper Proctor being on the defense witness list. If you've not heard of the Brian Walshe case, I'm going to give you the quickest TLDR I can. Brian Walshe is accused of murdering his wife, Anna Walshe. He says she left the house right into the new year of 2023 and went to Washington, D.C., where she was living. Apparently, she also had someone that she was seeing in D.C., which seems to be widely known. It seems that maybe this marriage was separating and she was living separately from the marital home in Massachusetts. Her job called law enforcement because she had not returned to work. And when Brian Walshe was interviewed, he's like, I don't know. She went to Logan. We didn't see her again. Well, there's a lot more that came out about that, including some very questionable Google searches that I think we'll see in trial, including how long. I don't know why every Google search starts with how long, but they do. How long until a body starts to smell, best way to dispose of a body if you really need to, and things along that line. Well, in a stunning turn of events, right before jury selection began, Brian Walshe pled guilty to 2 of the 3 things he's charged with. He was charged with the murder of his wife, Anna Walshe, but he was also charged with essentially obstruction of justice, misleading an investigation, and improper disposal of a body. He pled to the improper disposal of a body, and he pled to the misleading police. It seems to me, just legal thoughts here, that he is setting up the possibility to testify and say she died in some other way, and he did not report it to police. Instead, he, for whatever reason, and I have speculation about that, he decided that what he had to do was dispose of her body. Now, it seems that she was disposed of in multiple different locations, and a number of her things were recovered from a dumpster near his mother's house, along with a hacksaw and a hatchet. But will we see Brian Walshe say, and a number of law nerds have pointed this out in the chat and in the comments, will we see Brian Walshe say, hey, I was watching what went down in the Karen Reed case in 2022. I wasn't going to call these police. I didn't think that they would listen to me or believe me. And so I didn't know what to do. And is that what we will see Brian Walshe testify to? Because I think these pleas are setting him up to say, I admitted to the things that I did, but I did not murder her. She died in another way. And maybe blame Norfolk or Proctor. And maybe that's why Proctor's on the witness list. I am interested to see, but her remains were never recovered. The prosecution argued during the plea that that was due to the misleading of the police, that her remains were not recovered. So we'll see what happens. But the jury has been selected. They have the week off for Thanksgiving. They have 16 jurors. It's supposed to last about 3 weeks, maybe 4. The judge has said sternly she wants this case to the jury before Christmas. So if you need a trial in your ear while you are doing all of the December things, we're going back to Mass is where we're going. But it is not Judge Cannone, same courtroom, different players. We'll see what happens. This is shaping up to be a very interesting case, and we're going to go in it like members of the jury. So if you know way more about this case, it's going to be hard to not spoil, but we're going to go in it like members of the jury and see what unfolds. Opening statements are December 1st, so make sure you have the app and tune in with me. As always, I prioritize sleep very heavily, so we're going to be starting trial a little bit behind their anticipated 9 a.m. Eastern start time. We'll probably start closer to 11 a.m. Eastern because that's when the court will be taking the morning break, and it gives us plenty of Zoom room to run trial just a little bit later to accommodate for our West Coast folks and for busy mornings in my life. So I'm ready for trial. If you're ready for trial, hear ye, hear ye. We're going to Massachusetts. And in other Massachusetts cases, we need to talk about what's going on in the Karen Read case because yes, finally, after a lawsuit and more, the court, Judge Cannone, ordered the release of all of the sidebars. Have I gone through them yet? No. Is that going to happen in the immediate future? Probably not. Will we get to it? Yes, but we are going to be in trial. We will get to the sidebars. Don't you worry, but it's going to be a lot of sidebars, and I will do my best to try to condense those, and we will see, but we will get to the sidebars. And Karen Read had a hearing on Friday. All of it was by Zoom. This was a hearing in the wrongful death case. Remember, she is being sued along with the Waterfall and C.F. McCarthy's by John O'Keefe's family, his estate, and his brother individually, along with his mom and dad. Karen Read, the last time they were in court through attorneys, said, look, we're suing everyone, which she did. I covered it. I'll link that down below. We're suing everyone, and we want to bring them all into this case. What that means is that when the wrongful death case goes to trial, it could be the wrongful death case and Karen Read suing MSP, Canton, Proctor, Tully, Buchanan, the McCabe's, the Alberts, and Higgins, all before one jury. And I said that's going to be a bit of a stretch for the judge because it brings in a whole lot of parties that aren't part of the wrongful death suit. However, I can see where Karen Read's attorneys are going to argue, you're suing her for wrongful death. She's saying they all set her up. This is not on her. It's her defense to the wrongful death. So it all needs to come before the jury anyway. Well, Karen Read's attorneys withdrew the motion to consider consolidating those claims and have said in this last hearing on Friday that they are going forward with coordinating the discovery, and the two lawsuits Karen Read sues everybody and the wrongful death case are right now currently in different counties. So the lawyers for all of the parties involved have said that they're unsure if these cases will eventually be consolidated or not. But right now they are hoping to coordinate for purposes of discovery, which just makes sense. And the attorneys seem to be working together to make that happen. And truly, it's the most expeditious thing to do. But remember, MSP and Canton have still not been brought into that case yet. That still needs to happen. And this doesn't prevent Karen Read from bringing this case into the wrongful death case down the line by seeking to consolidate it and doing those motions then. So this could still happen. I think it's a wise acknowledgement of her attorneys that now might not be the right time. And we're going to have to wait and see if the McCabe, Alberts et al. Do countersue her for defamation, which they have said through their attorney they might. And we have to get through those initial stages of litigation, let the defendants answer, respond, countersue, make motions to dismiss. I think the court might be more amenable to consolidating the cases or even considering a dual jury situation for trial once the full posture of the case is known, meaning if any of the cities or localities or government agencies are going to settle, that'll be done. if any of the individuals are going to settle, which I doubt, but that'll be done. So once the case is a little bit further along, it might be a better time to bring up potentially consolidating them. So we'll have to wait and see, but they are working together for discovery. The wrongful death case is back in court December 19th, and we will see what's going on with discovery there. There's some motions to compel discovery, but all of that is going to be a bit up in the air because one of the attorneys said they are expecting over 1 million pages of discovery. So this civil case is not going anywhere anytime soon. And while we are looking at cases that don't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon, we need to talk about the David investigation and the death of Celeste Rivera. Now, we have talked about this in the past. Celeste Rivera was identified after her remains were found in the front trunk of a Tesla that was registered to singer David. We have talked about this a few times, mostly for me to say, guys, all of those headlines aren't accurate. Just ignore them. And there were many headlines floating around that David was not a suspect, that this case is essentially closed. And that's not what happened. LAPD had said, we are not sure yet what, if any, crimes have been committed, because in California, and you just saw this if you watched with me the Brian Walshe case, is that the moving a body or disposing of a body is a much less significant crime in terms of what potential time you can face and the level of the crime than homicide is. In California, that is a misdemeanor. So LAPD has said in the past, look, if she died of natural causes, if she died of an accident, maybe all we have here is improper disposal of a body, which would be a misdemeanor. But if there is foul play, then maybe there is more. But they have been very close to the cuff about it. Well, this week, LAPD did acknowledge that David is a suspect, which is an actual change in the case. And I wonder if they did that to dispel some of the headlines. But not only did they say he's a suspect, they also shared that he's not in fact cooperative. And whoever from his representatives were saying he was fully cooperating with police, well, that's not how law enforcement sees it. We are looking quickly at headlines from people.com saying David, quote unquote, not cooperating, still a suspect in the death of Celeste Rivera Hernandez, police say exclusive. The police have not interviewed him, a police source tells People. That doesn't surprise me. He has hired lawyers. Most lawyers are not going to tell you to go offer information to the police. They're going to say the right to remain silent only works if you exercise it. This article goes on to say that David is allegedly, quote unquote, not cooperating with investigators amid the investigation into the death of Celeste Rivera Hernandez, a 15-year-old girl whose body was found in the singer's car. I take issue with this. I've said it in past coverage simply because it seems that her date of death was before her 15th birthday. She ran away at 13. It seems to me that she was 14 when she passed. Does it matter? Yes, given that David is in his 20s and they're alleged to have had a relationship, I do think it matters. It goes on to say that a police source exclusively tells People that the musician, 20, born David Anthony Burke, is, quote, not cooperating with investigators and has not cooperated from the beginning. The source also says that police have not yet interviewed the singer and that there is still uncertainty surrounding which crimes David and his accomplices may have allegedly committed. That is an awkward sentence, but until the coroner's information is back, they don't yet know what happened. So they're going to have to wait. It goes on to say that the source adds that although David has been identified as a suspect, which is new information, the investigation remains ongoing. And the source notes that the LA medical examiner's final cause of death determination and toxicology report are still pending. And no potential charges or arrest can be pursued until further findings are available. They just don't have enough information. I rather they wait and get it right than rush and get it wrong. The police source also says, quote, we are working to determine if her death was a murder or something else. Again, I think we're going to see this argument in the Brian Walshe case, that yes, he pled to improperly disposing of a body, but he's going to argue, I didn't kill her. I was, insert excuse. And we'll see what happens. But LAPD, who has been very close to the cuff in this investigation and has not said much. So kudos to People for getting a source. And I know how thoroughly People does vet things. Their corporate lawyers are pretty strict more so than a lot of sources that I use, which is why I tend to rely on people more, especially when they are not just reporting what another site has said. They go and get their own sources, which I very much appreciate. So People has vetted this through a source. I'm glad they have a source that's talking to them, because RHD has been really, really quiet about this one. And I'm curious to see what happens. We'll see when the coroner comes back. It's been a bit of time, but you have to remember that her remains had been in the vehicle for some time, and that can slow things down in the investigation, unfortunately. The police source also shared with People that they have not yet been able to determine exactly when Rivas died. They say springtime is the closest we've come to determining the time of her death, not before then. I imagine they are also trying to get into any of her digital devices. We know that the home where David was staying had been searched and digital devices had been taken out of it, and they will probably look through her devices and his to try to find a pattern of life, the way that we heard so much about in the Murdaugh case. But pattern of life, if someone has access, if someone knew her passcodes or had access, can still be on her devices acting as if they are her, which we have seen in other cases. So it's going to take them time. Again, it's frustrating, but I rather have them get it right than get it fast. And speaking of fast, Jen Shah is getting released early from prison. This is also coming to us from People because they have some exclusive quotes. Jen Shah early prison release date revealed after Real Housewife of Salt Lake City alum serves 33 months. Quote, excited to put this chapter behind. The Bravo star has served over 2 years for her role in a nationwide telemarketing fraud scheme. And this is coming from my friend Dave Quinn, who I simply adore. So let's take a look at this article regarding Jen Shah's release. I will link you to my other coverage about this case. She ultimately ended up pleading guilty at literally the 11th hour before this case went to trial and received a 78-month federal prison sentence. She is serving her time currently at Camp Bryan, which is where Elizabeth Holmes is. It's now where Ghislaine Maxwell is and others. Not Julie Chrisley, though. She was at a different federal camp. But Jen Shah has clearly taken advantage of different programs in custody that can reduce your time. There are lots of opportunities. Not everyone takes advantage of those. It seems that she has. And then you get a good time, work time reduction. But it's really the programs that will reduce your time more. And it does seem from court records that I have looked at that restitution, in addition to forfeiture, is being paid. So sentencing in fraud crimes and nonviolent crimes does tend to be lower on the whole, which not everyone agrees with, and I understand. So I'm sure some are stunned that she is getting out in 33 months, but Jen Shah will be released on December 10th. One of my questions about this is A, will cameras be rolling? Because I imagine that they will be, whether they're Bravo cameras or someone else. Somebody's going to at least have a cell phone. There's going to be more footage of Jen Shah getting out of Camp Bryan than there was on that flight with Meredith and the rest of the Real Housewives. There was some footage of my flight with the Real Housewives, but if you haven't heard about that, you're going to have to join me on Stream of Members only to hear about my flight with the Real Housewives, which was not the flight that they've been talking about on Salt Lake City. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's fine. Well, we're all timestamped down below. You can skip the Bravo criminal coverage. It's going to need to be its own segment at this point, whether it's Bravo Lebs who are victims of their houses being broken into while they're at BravoCon, which we'll have to talk about another day when we have more information. But Kathy Hilton and Sutton Strack's homes were broken into while they were at BravoCon with bags and Birkins and jewelry and the rest of it stolen, like hundreds of thousands of dollars of goods stolen. Or whether they have been to prison like Jen Shah, or whether they are pending a case like the Osefos, which we'll talk about next. People writes that People can reveal exclusively the Federal Bureau of Prisons has approved a December 10th departure date. It's kind that they said departure, not release date, but it is what it is. For the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City alum, the decision marks the latest reduction to this 6.5-year sentence she's been serving since February 2023 for her role in a long-running nationwide telemarketing scheme. And yes, remember, there were a substantial number of defendants that were also sentenced in these cases. Shah's manager, Chris Giovanni, who I met at BravoCon, he is lovely. We had a very nice chat, said everyone's very grateful for the Bureau of Prisons decisions, especially because it means Jen will be able to reunite with her family for the holidays. Quote, it's a gift she doesn't take for granted. The quote goes on to say that Jen's in a really positive, hopeful place mentally. She's done a lot of reflecting and real growth during her time away and is genuinely not the same woman as she was before. Her focus is on her family and building a healthier and more grounded life. She understands the seriousness of the mistakes she made and is excited to put this chapter behind her so that she can show everyone the woman she's worked hard to become. A representative for the Bureau of Prisons tells People, quote, for privacy, safety, and security reasons, we will not discuss any incarcerated individuals, conditions of confinement, or specific release plans. Right. It goes on to say that since her surrender, Shah's sentence has been reduced multiple times. The BOP attributed these reductions to good behavior, participation in prison programming, and financial payments she has begun making to victims. In total, Shah has been ordered to pay $6.5 million in restitution. So when I say I think we'll see cameras up, look, I think we'll see cameras up. And the difficult thing about financial crimes, fraud crimes, is that the healing looks so much different because financial crimes, especially when we are looking at the targeting of, I don't want to say elderly, because the older I get, the less I think that over the age of 65 is elderly. However, victims who are further along in their wisdom and life, it becomes harder to financially recover. And it becomes harder to work in the way that you would earlier in life to recover from your retirement being gone or any type of financial crime. So it's something that I'm sure the victims are going to be incredibly frustrated with. I don't know if the restitution will be able to make everyone whole because there is also a huge component of trust that is very much damaged in cases like this when, especially with this telemarketing scheme, the fraud was carried out by multiple individuals over a period of time, different than a one thing that happened quickly. And fraud victims often blame themselves quite a lot for how did I not see this sooner? To any of the victims of this or other crimes, the people who are seeking to take advantage are the ones who are at fault. There are things you can do to try to protect yourself, but it is not on you. It is okay to forgive yourself, and it is okay to work to try to recover from this because it also doesn't define you. But the shame around fraud crimes is one of the reasons people don't reach out to friends or family and say, this doesn't seem quite right, or, oh, I think that this has become a huge mistake. And if we can just take some of that shame away, I hope that when people worry that they will be able to talk about the fact that they are concerned without then further being shamed. Like, how could you let that happen? Which is something that people unfortunately say to fraud victims way too often. And then they don't say anything and then it just compounds the problem. That is my soliloquy about fraud crimes, which was an area I worked in quite a lot. The article goes on to say her time was cut by 1 year in March 2023, by an additional 8 months in October 2024, and again in January when her projected release date was moved to November 3rd, 2026. A fourth reduction came in August, moving her departure date to August 30th, 2026. It goes on to say where Shah will go on December 10th remains unclear. Under BOP policy, she may be released to her home or transferred to a halfway house to complete the remaining portion of her sentence under supervision. A final decision will be made prior to her departure. So there might be a transition period, which I always think is helpful for people to have a transition period where you are still supported, but not as confined. And then there is a picture of Coach Shah and Jen while visiting Jen in custody. It goes on to say that throughout her time behind bars, Jen's husband, University of Utah football coach Sharif Coach Shah, has steadily stood by his wife's side. In August, Jen marked a major family milestone, celebrating her 31st wedding anniversary in a social media post to her account. No, she's not the one posting. Friends, family manager would be posting, but they took pictures while he was visiting the facility. And then they shared that picture and then shared a picture of her and her family with her kids and some of her social media posts. It goes on to share that in February 2024, Jen penned a personal letter to People reflecting on the first year of her sentence. In the note, she described the unrelenting pain of her first year away from her family, but said that she had found humility and perspective in the stories of other women at FPC Bryan. She wrote that her faith, daily prayer, and therapy helped her fight despair and stay grounded through the challenges of incarceration. Quote, I am most grateful for the aspects of my life that have never left me, my family, and my faith, she wrote, adding that in my daily prayers, I ask God for the courage to realize I am worthy of a second chance. I am finding the courage to set my fear and guilt aside. Everyone who has served their time deserves a second act. I hope that when Jen Shah gets out, she is able to go further in trying to make things right with the victims of her crimes. But she has served her time. People get a second chance. That is part of the system. It's frustrating to victims when they feel that it is harder for them to move forward than it is, especially when sentences get reduced. So we'll see. I don't know if she will be back on Bravo. I don't all the way know how I feel about how a TV network should handle the various crimes that have been going on with housewives. Yes, I think it's different when they are allegations than when they are convictions. Yes, I think there are, of course, a spectrum of that, but it is something that I never really considered when I first started watching, unscripted television, that a network would truly have to deal with. How do we handle cast members who get into legal trouble? Where do we fall? Does it vary based on what the legal trouble is? And where do we stand on having them back on a platform or not? Where can that be healing, or where is that too far? I would love to know your thoughts on it, because we are seeing more and more cases coming out of the reality world, including the Osefos, who did go to BravoCon, who did make a brief statement from what I saw at BravoCon about the support of those around them, who have not been convicted yet. So the allegations of insurance fraud essentially have not been proven. And we are seeing more information coming out about that prosecution right on the heels of BravoCon. And of course, the articles I talked about today will be linked below. The headlines here are: Real Housewife of Potomac's Wendy Osefo and husband Eddie allegedly have 40 credit cards under their names and aliases amid fraud charges, report. They go on to say that more information has come to light following the arrest of Real Housewife of Potomac star Dr. Wendy Osefo and her husband. The couple was arrested and booked on fraud charges in Maryland October 9th. The Baltimore Banner reported on November 20th that prosecutors involved in the case have requested additional financial records and argued that the pair have approximately 40 credit and/or debit cards, some of which are believed to be in company names, which is not inappropriate, and some are under aliases Pam Oliver and Eddie Hennessy. Now, the attorneys for the Osefos have said that they are public individuals, so they have things under other names for their privacy, and gave a lengthy statement on social media is where I saw it, but I will link that down below if I can find it on the law firm's website. Court documents in Maryland are about as easy to obtain as they are in Massachusetts. Not every court is easy. Some are, some aren't. Maryland, not so much. But the Baltimore Banner reported that the documents they viewed stated, quote, that the state expects such documentation to show a pattern of excessive spending supporting the motive in this case. The state avers that insurance fraud is a financial crime. I mean, you're committing fraud to get money. It's a financial crime. I agree. And in that, the amount of debt owed by the Osefos jointly, individually, and by the businesses they own is highly relevant to their motive. So they are seeking additional subpoenas to get additional records beyond the investigation just into the insurance fraud. And in response, the attorneys also said that the prosecution is, quote, looking for something they haven't figured out after 18 months of investigating. The couple is back in court on December 2nd. So we will see what happens with the Osefos' alleged insurance fraud. The prosecution is asking for more subpoenas. And if they get those, they will use them to show motive, because if you are trying to get money out of insurance and are fighting a uphill battle of debt, it can be a motive. But I also wonder if prosecutors are going to argue that trying to keep up with being on a show like a Real Housewives show, where wealth is a center point of the show and has grown to be more and more of a center point of the show recently, when you look back at older franchises, people are wearing jeans and those tank tops with the jeweled thingies, and people don't have glam squads, and the parties are in somebody's backyard. The show has, or the shows, the franchises have changed quite a bit. And I wonder if some of the pressure of being on a show like that is going to be part of the motive that the prosecution argues. We'll have to see. I want to know what you think. Thank you for joining me this Thanksgiving week on The Emily Show. Don't forget to get the Law Nerd app. We built it for you so that you can stay in the loop with what you want to watch most. Don't forget to subscribe here on The Emily Show channel for the podcast, and the case briefs, which now that we're going to be back in trial, we'll be back soon, and on the Emily D. Baker streaming channel where we cover gavel to gavel court, and we'll be back to it. So law nerds, I'm going to see you after Thanksgiving. Enjoy your pumpkin pie. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I hope you have a delightful break. And we're getting ready to go to court together, law nerds. Let's ride. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss updates on your favorite cases, you're going to need the Law Nerd app at lawnerdapp.com. That way you can stay in the loop on the cases that matter most to you, and you never know when you're going to catch feelings for a new case. So make sure you get it for free on iOS and Android. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a law nerd.